The street was nearly empty, a wet ribbon under sodium lights, when Ethan Parker eased off the accelerator. Something had moved near the curb, too steady to be trash, too low to be a person standing. He cracked the window and heard it before he fully saw it. A small, raw sound that didn't belong to the night. A wheelchair sat crooked on the slick sidewalk, one wheel jammed into a drainage grate. In it, a young woman hunched over her belly, shoulders shaking. Her hair was damp against her cheeks. Her hands were white-knuckled on the armrests. Ethan pulled to the shoulder, hazard lights winking, and stepped into the cold. "Hey," he said, keeping his voice even. "Are you okay?" Her head lifted. Tears balanced on her lashes, her lips trembling. "Please, my baby," she whispered. "Contractions. They started an hour ago. I thought I could make it to the bus." A breath hitched through her. "I can't." Ethan moved to the chair and crouched. "What's your name?" "Clara," she said, breathless. "Clara Mendoza. 36 weeks." The last word broke into a wince. Her abdomen clenched under a stretched sweater, the kind of tight, involuntary grip that pulled the air out of the moment. "Okay, Clara," he said, steady as he could make it. "We're going to the hospital. Right now." He checked the footrests, the brakes, the way her knees shook with each wave. She was shivering, part fear, part night air, part pain. He unlocked the passenger door of his BMW and angled the chair. "I'm going to lift with you," he said. "Arms around my neck on 3. 1, 2. She weighed less than he expected. He felt heat through her clothes, a feverish warmth that made him move faster. He guided her into the seat, tilted the backrest, buckled her in. When she exhaled, it came out as a small, shocked sob of relief. "The chair," she said, glancing toward the curb. "I've got it." He folded the wheelchair, fumbled a second with the latch, then slid it into the trunk, wiping his palms on his jeans before he climbed behind the wheel. He drove. Water hissed under the tires. The wipers beat a metronome against the windshield. Ethan kept his voice low and practical, the way you do when panic looks for an opening. "Breathe with me. Slow in, slower out. Tell me if the contractions change. Any bleeding?" "No." She gripped the door handle as another wave rolled through. "They're closer." She squeezed her eyes shut, counted under her breath, then forced them open again. "Thank you," she said, as if the words cost something. Everyone else just looked away. He checked the rear view. Empty lanes, green lights. Not tonight. A minute stretched. He wanted to call Lucas, tell his son he might be late, but the hospital was 10 minutes and a lifetime away, and he needed both hands on this moment. "Do you have a doctor?" he asked. "Clinic nurse," Clara said, jaw set. She said if anything fell off, go in. Everything fell off. Another intersection, another decision to push through a stale yellow. The city fell behind them in blocks, then in streaks of color. Clara's breath sawed, smoothed, sawed again. Ethan matched her cadence. He remembered fluorescent lights that once held both the happiest and the worst hours of his life, and pressed the memory back where it couldn't shake him. The hospital rose out of the mist like a promise with automatic doors. Ethan swung into the emergency lane, threw the car into park, and ran for a wheelchair he didn't need to unfold. There was one by the sliding doors. He jogged it to the passenger side, braced it, and met Clara's eyes. "We're here," he said. She nodded, tears bright and angry and relieved all at once. Together they pivoted her into the chair, the movement practiced now, almost choreographed by necessity. Inside, the air smelled like bleach and 2 bright mornings. Ethan called out, labor and delivery, 36 weeks, contractions every few minutes, no bleeding. His voice sounded calm enough to fool strangers, not his hands. A nurse appeared, then another. Wristband, blood pressure cuff, questions with boxes to check. "Are you family?" someone asked. "I'm the one who brought her in," Ethan said. "Please, she needs a bed." They pushed Clara toward the elevator. At the doors, she caught his sleeve, fingertips hot against his skin. Fear flickered into trust so quickly he felt it travel through him. "Don't go," she whispered. "I'll be here," he said, and meant it. The doors closed, carrying her up into blue halls and machines that listen. Ethan stood there a beat longer than he needed to, breath fogging in the lobby light. He didn't know Clara beyond a name and a handful of minutes. But the night had shifted on its axis, and he knew one thing with a clarity that settled in his bones. He wasn't done with this woman's story. Not by a long shot. The elevator swallowed Clara and the nurses, leaving Ethan in the draft of the sliding doors and the thrum of a vending machine that hummed like it had a fever. He forced his feet toward the registration desk because doing something was better than being a statue in an emergency entrance. The clerk slid a clipboard at him before he could speak. Name of patient: Clara Mendoza, he said, grateful to have an answer. 36 weeks. Contractions every 3 or 4 minutes. No bleeding. Relation? He hesitated. The truth landed before the explanation. I brought her in. The clerk nodded, unfazed. Have a seat. They'll update you. He didn't sit. He took the clipboard anyway and started filling fields no one had asked him to fill. Time, location found, approximate duration of contractions, temperature of her skin, hot, too hot. Anything that might be useful to someone who would never read his handwriting. When his fingers got ahead of his thoughts, he put the pen down and called home. Lucas picked up on the second ring, voice rough with sleep. Dad, hey buddy, I'm okay, Ethan said, stepping away from a security guard's radio chatter. I stopped to help someone, and I'm at County General. I might be late. Is she okay? She's having a baby, he said softly. We got here in time. Go back to sleep. I'll text you if I'll be really late. Lucas was quiet. You always say that, and then you're home before the cereal gets soggy. Ethan felt something loosen and tighten at once. I'll try to keep that streak. He hung up and finally let his body fold into a waiting room chair that had lost an argument with time. The place smelled like bleach and burnt coffee. A TV in the corner played a muted nature documentary, tropical fish gliding around coral, while a closed caption line announced, "Mothers carry their young in dangerous waters." He stared at the words too long. A door opened, and a nurse in navy scrubs appeared with purposeful steps. "Mister?" she prompted. "Parker." "Ethan. I'm Dana. You brought Ms. Mendoza. She's in triage," the nurse said, professional but kind. "Vitals are elevated but stable. Contractions are consistent. We're monitoring fetal heart rate now. Do you need anything from me?" he asked, rising halfway. "You did a lot already," she said. "Do you know her medical history?" He shook his head. "Just that she mentioned a clinic nurse. No bleeding on the way here. Feverish to the touch." Dana jotted a note. "We'll check labs. If she's in active labor, we'll admit her. Can you tell her I'm here?" The question sounded too soft for the fluorescent light, but he let it stand. "I will," Dana said, and disappeared with the same efficient grace. The wall clock declared it was somehow past midnight. Somewhere down a hall, a baby cried with the outraged clarity of someone new to air. Another answered, then settled. Sounds darted in and out. Rolling carts, shoe squeaks, a laughter burst from behind a door, and then silence. Ethan stood again. He walked to the water fountain, took a sip that tasted like the building, and walked back. His phone screen lit his face. A photo of Lucas on a Little League field, hat crooked, grin defiant. He thought of the night Lucas was born, the flurry of nurses, the way Lauren had crushed his hand and laughed through pain, and how the room afterward had felt like the entire world had shrunk to one square of warm light. He let the memory wash up and recede before it could capsize him. Dana returned with a different energy, faster, focused. "She's dilated to 5, she said. "We're admitting her to labor and delivery. Fetal heart, tones look reassuring. Her temp's up. We've started fluids and antibiotics just in case." Relief and adrenaline fought for the same space in his chest. "Is there anything she needs?" She didn't have a bag. "We'll supply basics," Dana said. "If you want to be useful, a phone charger and lip balm are gold." "I can do that," he said, grateful for a task that had edges. He jogged to the lobby shop, grabbed a charger in plastic packaging that would require a small tool kit to open, a bottle of water, lip balm, and a pack of crackers nobody ever specifically wanted but always ate. Back in L&D, he handed the bag to Dana, who lifted it like he'd brought a rare medicine. "She asked if you left," Dana said, almost offhand, but not. "What did you tell her?" "That you were being a pain in the neck out here, and we couldn't get rid of you." Dana smiled. "She liked that." "Good," he said, and meant it. Forms found their way into his hands again. HIPAA acknowledgments, a visitor pass sticker with his name smudged. He signed where someone pointed and wore what they gave him. When he finally stopped moving, The weight of the night settled without crushing him. It had a center now, a room upstairs where a stranger he'd met on a curb was breathing through pain and bringing a person into the world. The TV changed to local news without sound. The caption scrolled, "Overnight forecast, calm, light rain." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands laced to keep them still. He watched the hallway instead of the screen, counting the rhythms he could control, in for 4, out for 6. He didn't know what the next hour would ask of him, but the decision had already been made in the car, in the way her fingers had clung to his sleeve at the elevator. He wasn't family. He wasn't required. He was here. The maternity floor had its own weather, quiet, pressurized, the air a little cooler than anywhere else, as if the building knew how much heat each room already contained. Ethan found a corner chair facing the corridor and sat with the posture of someone ready to stand in a heartbeat. The vinyl had a split in the arm. He traced it with his thumb the way people trace coastlines on maps, pretending the shape means control. The wall clock announced each minute like a small verdict. The second hand stuttered forward. A volunteer wheeled past with neatly folded blankets. A father in a faded college sweatshirt paced, phone to his ear, whispering reassurances to a voice Ethan couldn't hear. A lullaby chime sounded overhead. Someone had delivered, and the hospital celebrated each birth with 8 music box notes that vanished as quickly as they arrived. He texted Lucas, admitted, "She's okay so far. Try to sleep. I love you." 3 dots appeared, then nothing, then finally, "Love you too. Tell her good luck from me." That squeezed something behind Ethan's ribs. He typed "will do" and pocketed the phone before sentiment could turn into gravity. The vending machine coughed a coil of pretzels into a metal tray. He bought them and didn't open the bag. The waiting room TV showed a loop of the hospital's care team montage, smiling nurses, a doctor in a lab coat pointing at a tablet, a patient high-fiving a physical therapist, silenced by a closed caption crawl that lagged a sentence behind every smile. He turned the screen off with a thumb tap. No one protested. The room inhaled. A door hissed. Dana appeared again, a tablet tucked against her scrubs. "Update," she said before he could stand all the way. "Ms. Mendoza is 7 centimeters, membranes intact, labs pending. Baby's tracing looks reactive. She's handling the contractions like a champ." Ethan exhaled, felt it reach his shoulders. "Does she want anything?" Dana's mouth softened. She asked if the man from the car was still here. She angled her head toward a pair of double doors. "You can't go in yet, but she knows you're out here." "I'll stay," he said, as if the chair itself were a promise. Time crept and then leapt. He remembered a nurse once telling him that labor does that. Plateaus that feel endless until the floor tilts all at once. He let that metaphor hold the hour. He tried reading the evacuation map as if it were a short story. He made a list on a receipt in his wallet. Phone charger, done. Lip balm, done. Extra swaddle, infant onesies, peri bottle, snacks, soft socks, taxi numbers she'd never need if he had a say. The list calmed him by pretending the future was a set of items you could purchase if you remembered your card. Another lullaby chime. Another minute verdict. The father in the sweatshirt disappeared behind a door and did not return. A new nurse rotated in behind the desk with the bright alertness of third shift, hair braided tight, pin already uncapped. The corridor light changed tone so slightly Ethan wondered if he imagined it. Morning threatening the edges of the night. He stood to stretch and found he was at the window before he knew he was moving. Rain slicked the city to a blur, streetlights dissolving into long gold threads. In the reflection, he saw a man who looked like himself and also not. Older in the posture, younger in the eyes. He thought of Lauren for a bare second, the way she had squeezed his hand and told him, "We can do hard things," like she was giving him a password for future rooms. He carried the sentence back to the chair and set it down beside him, within reach. The doors opened. Dana again, quicker now. 8.5. We broke her water, clear fluid. Temps coming down with fluids and Tylenol. She's focused, breathing, swearing appropriately. The nurse smiled. "We're getting close." Ethan's laugh was more breath than sound. "Tell her Lucas says good luck." "I already did," Dana said, and the kindness in the already steadied him more than the numbers. He thanked her, sat, stood, sat again. He pictured the highway where he'd found Clara, the wheelchair tilted, the grate, the streak of wet concrete. and tried to place that image on a timeline that ended in a heartbeat measured on paper upstairs. The hospital's hum folded around him, neutral and relentless. He wasn't family. He wasn't required. But he had become, somehow, a constant, an object that stays where it is unless acted upon by a force. And the only force he recognized right now was the one pulling him forward, the simple decision not to leave. The hallway clock had just crawled past 4 when the double doors breathed open and Dana appeared with that quick, contained smile nurses wear when the news matters. "You can exhale, Mr. Parker," she said. "They're both okay. It's a boy. Good tone, strong cry, Apgar solid. Mom's temp is trending down. We'll settle them in recovery." Ethan didn't realize he'd stood until the chair scraped. Relief hit first like a warm wave. The aftershock was a tremble he hid by rubbing his palms together. "Can I?" "You can't go into the room," Dana said gently, "but you can look through the nursery glass in 5. He nodded too many times. "Tell her I'm still here." "I did," Dana said. "She told me to tell you to breathe." He laughed, and some of the night let go. The nursery window was a rectangle of soft yellow light, a small city inside the hospital. Nurses moved with the grace of people who understand both urgency and tenderness. In the third bassinet from the left, a swaddled baby flailed one determined fist skyward as if filing a complaint with gravity. A card clipped to the rail read Mendoza, boy, Mateo, in block letters. "Hey there, Mateo," Ethan murmured to Glass and Glow. "Welcome to the project." Lucas would want a picture. He didn't take one. The moment felt too much like a thing that couldn't be flattened into pixels. He watched a nurse place the baby against Clara's chest in the recovery room beyond, skin to skin, the world shrinking to shared warmth and the slow miracle of breathing in sync. Clara's eyes closed, not in sleep, but in a kind of surrender that looked like trust. He made himself useful the way people do when they can't do the one thing their body has been insisting on: walk into the room and guard the space. The lobby shop opened at 5. He was there at 5:01, buying a charger, lip balm, water, crackers, a tiny pack of unscented wipes, and socks with grippy dots. He tore the charger from its impossible packaging with the patience of a bomb tech, coiled it neatly, and handed the bag to Dana at the desk like a relay baton. "She'll be in recovery for a couple hours," Dana said. "You can sit nearby. We'll take the bag in." "Will you tell her Lucas says congratulations?" he asked. Dana's smile went sideways. "Already did. She said to tell Lucas that Mateo owes him a high five." The chair outside recovery was close enough that he could hear the soft industry of the room. The beep of a SAT monitor, the whisper of swaddling cloth, the low murmur of a nurse explaining aftercare. Fatigue tried to climb his spine. He shook it off with a stretch and a paper cup of coffee that tasted like the color brown. Dawn smudged the city through a narrow window, streetlights blinking out, rain-slick asphalt transforming from black to silver. A tech cracked the door. "Mr. Parker? She's asking if you're still around." "I'm here," he said, and the words steadied him again. "Give us 10, the tech added. Then you can say hello. 2 minutes, tops." 2 minutes was an ocean and a heartbeat. He spent both. When the door finally opened, he stepped into a room that smelled faintly of antiseptic and new beginnings. Clara looked small against the pillows, hair swept back, face washed clean of the street and the night. Mateo slept in the crook of her arm, mouth relaxed, fist loosened to nothing. Ethan stopped at the line a sign told him not to cross. "Hey," he said, suddenly unsure what counted as appropriate joy in a room like this. "You did it." Clara's smile was thin but real. "We did it," she whispered. Her voice was sandpapered by effort and wonder. "Thank you for not leaving. I told you I'd be here." She nodded toward the little gift bag on her tray. "Dana said you brought half a store. Only the essentials, electricity and salt." Clara looked down at Mateo, then up at Ethan. "His name's Mateo," she said, as if testing how the room would hold it. "I wanted something that meant gift without sounding like a lesson." "It fits," he said. "He's got opinions already." A tiny sound escaped the baby, more sigh than cry. Clara adjusted him with the confidence of someone who had earned it in hours, not years. "They'll take us upstairs soon. I don't know what happens after that." "You rest," Ethan said. "I'll figure out the rest with you, if you want." Clara studied him for a breath that felt longer than it was. In her eyes he saw the night on the curb, the elevator doors, the moment trust flickered and caught. She nodded once. I want. A nurse touched Ethan's sleeve, a gentle boundary. Time. He backed to the door. I'll be right outside, he said. I know, Clara replied, and closed her eyes, rocking the smallest piece of dawn in her arms while the day assembled itself around them. They moved Clara to a small postpartum room with a window that framed a strip of pale sky. Mateo slept in the clear bassinet like a secret everyone already knew. Ethan stood near the chair by the radiator, hands in his pockets the way people do when they don't trust them to stay still. The morning had the hush of a library. Sit, Clara said, voice soft but steady. You look like you've been on your feet for years. He took the chair. For a while they watched the inhale-exhale mechanics of a newborn who owned the room without trying. When Clara spoke again, it came without ceremony. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she said. I mean, none of it ever is. But this, it was ordinary, right up until it wasn't. Ethan waited, not filling the space with the kind of questions that hurry truth into hiding. In October, she said, I was in the backyard, clearing leaves. I had this old aluminum stepladder, 3 rungs, wobbly, the kind you keep because it hasn't failed you yet. She smiled without humor. I was already pregnant. 8 weeks. I shouldn't have been on it, I know. But the gutter was clogged and the rain was coming and she stopped. My foot slipped. That's the whole story, and somehow not at all. She traced the edge of the blanket with a thumb. I missed the bottom rung and fell backward. My lower back hit the stone step. Stupid, sharp little step I've passed every day. Everything went loud and white, and then quiet. I could move, but it felt wrong, like my body was borrowing itself. Ethan felt his own muscles tighten in sympathy. Did you go in right away? I did. Scans, a doctor who spoke in layers. Contusion, swelling, watch for red flags. Follow up with neuro if symptoms persist. They were careful because of the baby. I went home with pain meds I barely took and appointments I couldn't afford. She glanced at Mateo, then back. Walking became math. Every step had a cost. Sometimes my legs forgot the conversation entirely. By December, I was in the chair more than I wasn't. She let the next part sit in her mouth before letting it out. Luis, the husband part of this story, changed shape. At first, he was careful carrying groceries, setting timers for my meds. Then he started counting what I couldn't do out loud. He said I was costing us everything. That pregnancy plus whatever this is made me irresponsible. A small, astonished laugh escaped her, as if I chose both at once to inconvenience him. What did the doctors say? Ethan asked, keeping his voice level. Inflammation around the lumbar spine, probably nerve impingement, maybe a small herniation. Prognosis, good with time and PT. But time is expensive when your hours get cut because stairs are everywhere and customers don't like slow. She swallowed. One morning, he left a list on the counter of the ways I could contribute. Sell the car. Cancel the midwife. Move to his brother's place. I suggested he try tenderness, just once. He said tenderness doesn't pay rent. Silence threaded the room. The bassinet creaked as Mateo stretched and settled. By January, he was sleeping at work. In February, he told me he wasn't built for this and I should call my parents. They're gone, she added quickly. So he packed a bag. He said he'd send money when he could, and then he didn't. I learned bus ramps, Medicaid lines, the way social workers memorize your story so you don't have to say it 20 times. I learned which shelters keep a clipboard for mothers and which have cots that bite you in the night. She drew a careful breath. When the contractions started last night, I tried to time them on a cracked phone with 3% battery. The bus never came. I thought, I can push the chair 3 more blocks. Then the curb cut wasn't a curb cut, just a lip like a dare, and I got stuck. I was crying more from anger than pain, I think. And then your car light was on me like I'd been found doing something illegal. I almost didn't wave. Pride is a stupid, heavy thing to carry when your hands shake. Ethan leaned forward, forearms on knees. You didn't need to carry it alone. I know that now, she said, and for the first time the word now sounded like a place you could live. I thought losing the walking part of me meant losing the useful part. But then you folded my chair like you'd done it 100 times and talked me through breathing like you'd learned the language decades ago. You didn't promise anything. You just didn't leave. He had nothing smart to say, which felt correct. What do you need, Clara? He asked instead. Short term? To sleep without listening for doors. To feed him without calculating ounces against dollars. To shower sitting down. To not be told what I ruined. She looked at him straight. Long-term. Point. A chance to work again, even if it's from a kitchen table. And a home that isn't a cot by a hallway light. He nodded, carrying each item like a blueprint. Those are solvable. You say that like you fix servers for a living, she said, a corner of her mouth lifting. I do, Ethan said. Systems break. We patch and iterate. Clara glanced at Mateo, then the window where daylight was negotiating its way in. Then maybe this is the patch, she said. And we iterate towards something that doesn't hurt every second. He stood, because he needed motion to match the valve forming in his chest. I'm going to talk to the nurse about discharge plans, he said. And when they ask where you're going, I want to tell them. With us. Guest room. A door you can close. For as long as it takes. Clara didn't answer immediately. She looked at her son, then at the man who had arrived at the curb like a decision. Okay, she said finally, the syllables landing like an anchor. For as long as it takes. By afternoon, the whiteboard over Clara's bed had a new line in green marker. Discharge target. Today. The nurse explained that postpartum rooms turned over fast, supplies were limited, the baby was healthy, Clara's fever had receded. It all sounded clinical and reasonable until Ethan pictured a bus stop and a newborn's breath fogging in February air. Clara listened, nodding like a model patient. There's a downtown shelter, she said afterward, adjusting Mateo's cap. They keep 3 beds for mothers. If I'm early, I usually get one. Usually? Ethan echoed, keeping his voice calm while a cold edge threaded behind his ribs. They post a list at 4, she said. If your name isn't on it, you try again tomorrow. Or you sit in chairs they call overflow and pretend the lights aren't on all night. She glanced at him, saw the storm building, and added gently, it's not as terrible as it sounds. Some of the volunteers knit hats. It's not happening, he said, and surprised himself with how evenly the words landed. He softened the edges. Come home with me. Guest room. Door that closes. Bathroom with a bench I installed when my mom visited after her surgery. We'll handle food, diapers, everything. A few days, a week, longer if you need it. No scorekeeping. Clara's fingers kept tracing Mateo's temple, circling a tiny cowlick. I don't want to be charity. You're not, he said, and meant it so fully that the floor felt steady again. This is logistics. Safety. You and Mateo need sleep. My house has it. I've got a car. You've got appointments. I make more pasta than 2 people should eat. You have someone who will wake you before the pot boils over. She smiled at that, a small, reluctant curve that admitted a fact her pride could tolerate. What about Lucas? He'll ask 100 questions and then decide Mateo needs a Lego spaceship, Ethan said. He has a good heart and an annoying alarm that goes off at 6:30. The case manager arrived with a clipboard of options, community referrals, WIC appointments, a sheet of numbers in small print. Ethan stayed quiet while Clara listened, asked careful questions, took pictures of pages with her phone. When the woman asked about discharge destination, Clara glanced at Ethan, then back. With a friend, she said, voice steady. For now. Forms multiplied, then ended. A tech fitted Mateo's car's seat, double-checked the chest clip, and taught Ethan the choreography of straps and buckles like it were a sacred rite. They wheeled to the curb where his BMW waited with its trunk yawning open, the same trunk that had swallowed the folded wheelchair last night like a promise. Clara lowered herself carefully into the passenger seat, movements precise from both caution and practice. Ethan secured the chair, then the stroller and nurse found in a donation closet, then tucked the diaper bag beside them as if packing could ward off chaos. The drive home felt different than the sprint in. Daylight made the city honest. Laundromats steaming the sidewalk, a man sweeping his stoop, a woman walking a dog in a sweater too bright to be accidental. Clara watched with that dazed, post-birth attention that lands on small things, a mailbox dent, a mural's chipped corner, the way light blinked off bus windows. Mateo slept with that newborn totality that makes the car a chapel. At Ethan's house, Lucas flung the door open with theatrical care because he'd been told a baby was sleeping. His hair stuck up on one side. His socks didn't match. Hi, he whispered loudly. I made a sign. He held up printer paper with block letters. Welcome, Clara and Mateo. The ampersand was backwards. The pride was not. Clara's answer was quiet and astonished. Hi, Lucas. She looked at the paper like it weighed exactly the right amount. That might be the nicest sign anyone's made for me. They did the tour in the low voice of libraries. Guest room with a real bed and a window that caught afternoon sun. Bathroom with the bench. Living room with a couch that had lost dignity but kept comfort. Kitchen with a jar labeled pasta emergency. Ethan set up the portable crib by the window and plugged in a sound machine that made ocean noises far from any coast. He showed Clara where the extra blankets lived, where the medicine goes, where the coffee hides. House rules, he said, leaning on the doorframe like a gentle sheriff. You don't thank me for every glass of water. You tell me when the chair needs adjusting. You can say no to anything, including my terrible playlists. And you can stay as long as it makes sense. We'll review in a week and pretend we're professionals. Clara sat on the edge of the bed and let out a breath she'd been holding for months. The room seemed to grow around the sound, as if the walls had been waiting to hear it. Okay, she said. Her eyes glistened but didn't spill. Okay. Lucas peeked in with a stuffed dinosaur. For Mateo, he announced. It's clean. I asked the washing machine twice. Clara took it with ceremonial gravity. Then it's perfect. Later, when the house had found its evening rhythm, sauce simmering, washer thumping, sound machine oceaning, Ethan passed the guest room and saw Clara asleep on top of the covers, Mateo curled against her, the wheelchair parked like a loyal dog within reach. He stood there long enough to feel the word home adjust itself, making room. Mornings began to line up like polite guests. The first sound was the kettle, then the quiet shush of the sound machine winding down in the guest room, then Mateo's small talk. Those pre-crime murmurs that sounded like someone discovering vowels. Ethan set a mug at the same place on the counter each day, not out of superstition, but because routine felt like scaffolding. Lucas padded in with bed hair and unmatched socks and asked the same question every time. Is he awake yet? As if the answer might change the entire weather of the house. Clara moved carefully at first, mapping new routes with the wheelchair, learning which doorways were generous and which had opinions. She'd pull herself to sitting with a practiced push, check Mateo's diaper with the brisk tenderness of a person already bilingual and newborn, then glance toward the hallway until Ethan appeared with a tray. Oatmeal, sliced banana, glass of water, the phone charger she always forgot she'd unplugged. The thanks hovered on her lips. He'd shake his head, a reminder of the house rule. She learned to trade, thank you for this helps, and somehow that felt sturdier. Lucas adored the baby with a seriousness that startled everyone. He asked permission before touching, washed his hands like a surgeon, and narrated his moves. I'm going to hold his foot now? Okay, I am now holding a foot. When Mateo's hand latched around his finger, Lucas beamed like he'd been granted a tiny knighthood. He read aloud from a comic book in a solemn voice, editing on the fly. And then the hero takes a nap because naps make you strong. Ethan cooked more than made sense for 3.5 people. Pancakes on Tuesdays because Lucas had once said Tuesday sounded like a breakfast word. Soup on the nights when wind bullied the windows. Pasta when he ran out of ideas. He left a notepad on the fridge labeled supplies and miracles. Under it, Clara wrote small items that meant dignity. Hair ties, unscented soap, the good kind of socks. Ethan added doorstop and felt pads for chair and crossed off diapers so thoroughly the ink bruised the paper. The home PT started with a woman named Yara who wore bright sneakers and spoke in metaphors that made pain feel negotiable. She measured ranges of motion, watched Clara transfer from bed to chair, nodded at the way she guarded her left side. We wake muscles like we wake teenagers, Yara said. Gently, repeatedly, and with snacks nearby. The first sessions looked like small things. Ankle pumps, quad sets, glute squeezes that felt like trying to flex a memory. Clara's face tightened. Then she breathed into the work, counting with Yara while Ethan timed reps on his phone and Lucas handled morale by awarding stickers from a sheet he'd found in a desk drawer. You get a gold star for effort and a silver star for not saying bad words, he announced. Clara laughed despite the burn. Sensation crept back in whispers. One morning, while adjusting herself in the chair, Clara froze. Pins, she said, startled. Like soda bubbles. Right, calf? Yara grinned like she'd won a small lottery. Welcome back to the party, she said, and marked the chart. From then on, the exercises felt less like penance and more like investing in a possibility visible only when you squinted the right way. Evenings belonged to soft light and small victories. Mateo's schedule stabilized into a pattern only babies pretend is intentional. Ethan learned to swaddle without creating origami disasters. Clara learned the particular geography of the house at night, the exact number of steps from crib to chair, the way the hallway light pooled just enough to see without waking everyone. On the third week, she managed to pivot transfer without help. "I've got it," she said when Ethan reached out. He stepped back and became heir in applause. Trust arrived in domestic disguises. Clara left her sweater on the couch. Ethan did not fold it immediately. Lucas taped his welcome sign to the guest room door permanently and added, "and also dinosaur." Clara opened the cupboard and moved the coffee mugs to a lower shelf without asking. Ethan didn't move them back. They didn't talk about permanence, not directly. They talked about schedules and WIC appointments and which stroller route had the fewest cracked sidewalks. But when Lucas asked, "Is Clara staying for my school concert?" Ethan and Clara answered at the same time, "Yes." And the word set itself down in the living room like furniture you stop noticing because it belongs. One night, as dishes dried on the rack and Mateo snored in a register too cute to be legal, Clara wheeled to the doorway and watched Ethan replace a squeaky hinge with the concentration he brought to server logs. "You fix things," she said, not a question. He looked up, wiped his hands. "I try. Doesn't always stick." "This does," she said, gesturing vaguely. "The house, the quiet, the way the day folded around a baby without cracking. It sticks." They didn't name what was forming between them. They didn't need to. It was in the way Ethan set the brake on her chair without making it a performance. In the way Clara texted him a grocery list that included his favorite cereal. In the way Lucas lined 3 tiny socks on the back of the couch, so Mateo can choose his vibe. The house, once too tidy, learned the choreography of a family. A stroller by the door, a burp cloth on the armrest, laughter that lingered long after bedtime as if it had decided to live there full time. Progress didn't arrive like a trumpet. It knocked like a neighbor, politely, then more often. Yara started bringing resistance bands and a portable set of parallel bars that clamped to the floor like a temporary bridge. "Today we walk without walking," she said, setting metronome beats on her phone. "Weight shift. Trust the leg that acts shy." Clara gripped the bars. Her shoulders trembled with the effort of belief. Left foot, an intention. Right foot, a rumor. Ethan stood at her hip, one hand open but not touching. The spotter who knows that help lands best when it's optional. Lucas kept count like a sportscaster. "And she holds for 3. No, for 4. We have a new record, folks." After reps, they celebrated with water and the kind of jokes that make pain take a seat. Pins and needles returned to Clara's calves more reliably, then climbed like ivy. Ankles, shins, the outer edge of her right thigh. "Sometimes it's not pain," she said, startled. "It's presence." Yara nodded. "Exactly. The map is redrawing." Ethan reconfigured the living room like a careful engineer. Rug taped down. A path wide enough for chair turns without scraped knuckles. He lowered a shelf and didn't announce it. He tightened the armrest bolt that squeaked every third push. He alphabetized the pill organizer because order was one of the few gifts he could give that didn't ask permission. When he caught himself hovering, he moved to the kitchen and let Clara struggle for a beat longer than his nerves liked. Say when, he'd offer. "Not yet," she'd answer, and then, "Now," like a captain calling for wind. Work returned in thin, steady lines. Ethan set up an old laptop with clean accounts, a second monitor at wheelchair height, a password manager, automatic backups, defenses against the world's small cruelties. Clara took a test project from a local florist, swap hero images, fix mobile menus, tame a rogue script that shoved buttons off screen. She clicked with Mateo asleep in the carrier against her chest, learning the cadence of code again. Find bug, breathe, solve, save, test, grin. Payment hit her account 24 hours later, tiny but loud. She paid a bill and cried in that quiet way that doesn't ask for tissues. "It's not the amount," she said, wiping her cheek with the heel of her hand. "It's the angle. Forward." The house adjusted its watch to rehab time. Lunch shifted around nap windows. Meetings became phone calls walked in circles around the block with a stroller. Ethan talking infrastructure while Mateo blinked at trees like they'd invented oxygen just for him. On rainy days, Lucas built obstacle courses from couch cushions and declared them PT but with branding. Yara approved. Functional play, she said. Our favorite kind. Then came the day of the stand. Not a full one, more a rehearsal for gravity. Yara set the bars, checked the cane, looked Clara in the eye. We'll load 50% through the legs, 50 through the arms. Your brain will scream. Tell it thank you, and continue. Clara inhaled, exhaled, pressed down through the soles of feet that had been spectators for months, and rose. Not far, not long, but up. Ethan felt his own knees shake with borrowed shock. Lucas hooped, then slapped a hand over his mouth as if joy needed a mute button in case it spooked. 10 seconds. 12. Back to the chair with control that felt like victory's cousin. Yara logged it clinically and celebrated shamelessly. We stack seconds, she said, tapping the note. Seconds make minutes. Minutes make walks. Walks make errands. Errands make life. Confidence trailed after like a kite. Clara asked to try the kitchen without the chair for 2 steps, then 3, using the counter like a shoreline. She missed, once, hip bump, a hissed curse, a laugh that tamed the sting, and then adjusted. Ethan learned when to turn away so triumph could be private. Lucas invented a sticker for attempts, a crooked little star that said nice try in bubble letters. It became the most coveted badge on the fridge. At night, when the house spun down to the hum of appliances and a baby's even breath, Ethan and Clara compared notes like co-authors. Tomorrow, quads first, then transfers, she'd say. And I'll invoice the florist. He'd nod. I'll move the grab bar 2 inches. And I'll make Thursday's meeting as a call so I can spot for you at 11. Their eyes would meet, the conversation widening without words. The old ache in Ethan, lost shaped like a room with the lights off, didn't vanish. It softened at the edges, held at bay by the daily fact of 3 toothbrushes in a cup and a tiny 4th in a drawer waiting its turn. Progress rarely makes speeches. It leaves evidence, a faint heel scuff at the base of the parallel bars, a to-do list with more check marks than blanks, a bank notification that means groceries without dread, a child who falls asleep mid-story because the house feels so safe he doesn't need to finish the chapter. When Clara lay in bed and flexed her right foot on purpose, just a whisper of motion, but chosen, she whispered into the dark, not a prayer exactly, not thanks to a universe that had been careless, but a promise, tomorrow, again. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, thick and official, the kind that makes doorways feel narrower. It was addressed to Clara Mendoza in a font that had never met her voice. She turned it over once, then twice, as if it might reveal better news from another angle. Ethan set a mug beside her and said nothing until she nodded. Inside, a stamped notice of dissolution, a case number, 3 pages of sterile farewell. No apology, no handwritten line in the margin, just bullets and deadlines. At the bottom, a signature she knew too well, Luis E. Dot, rendered strangely harmless by the fact that it was ink and not a person. Clara read twice. The second time she breathed. I thought I wanted an explanation, she said, folding the letter along the crease it offered. Turns out a docket number is enough. They called the legal aid office the next morning. Brianna, a social worker with calm eyes and a cubicle full of succulents, walked Clara through paperwork for custody and child support without talking down to her or away from her. You don't have to want conflict to want protection, Brianna said, clicking through forms. We'll ask for what Mateo needs. That's not aggression. That's parenting. Ethan sat 2 chairs away, a presence and a pen when signatures multiplied. Back home, the letter joined other papers in a tidy file box Ethan labeled Mateo, important in black marker. The neatness felt like defense, not denial. Lucas asked if the envelope was bad news or grown-up news. Clara considered. Grown-up, she said. But it means we get to keep our plans. Lucas nodded, satisfied with the algebra of it. Life refused to pause for legalese. PT kept its rhythm. Yara arrived with a new exercise that looked like defiance and felt like a miracle. Sit to stand with a cane. The first attempt wobbled, the second held. Stack your wins, Yara said, tapping her notebook. We're in the business of small skyscrapers. Work trickled in, then pooled. The florist referred Clara to a neighborhood bakery with a website that believed every phone was a billboard. She rebuilt their menu page so it scrolled like a conversation, and the owner paid her in cash and eclairs, neither of which lasted long. She sent an invoice without apology. Watching the payment land made her cheeks wet and her laugh soft. "It's not rescue," she said to Ethan that night, Mateo asleep between them on a folded blanket. "It's rent I paid by moving pixels. I miss that feeling." No dramatic knock ever interrupted dinner. No text from an unknown number arrived at midnight full of regret and demands. The silence where Luis might have been turned out to be spacious, not hollow. Clara learned the difference between absence and relief. She stopped carrying her phone from room to room like a siren and left it on the counter like a tool. The house made new rituals that looked accidental until they weren't. Lucas invented Concert Thursdays, where he performed on a cardboard stage while Mateo gurgled and Clara kept time by tapping her cane on the rug. Ethan overcooked pasta once and was not exiled. It became a running joke and then a badge of belonging, Sauce Day, in which everyone had an opinion that somehow led to the same bowl. On a Sunday, Clara watched Ethan trim a stubborn branch over the back steps, the one she'd fallen beneath months ago in a different backyard. He cut carefully, rope threaded through the limb, tension set just right so gravity would mind its manners. When the branch finally lowered without crashing, Clara felt something unclench high behind her ribs. She could almost map the route from accident to aftermath to after, a place with coffee and baby socks and plans that stretched more than a week ahead. The certified letter didn't go away, it just changed jobs. It stopped being a ghost and became paperwork. Brianna emailed court dates with calm timestamps. Clara marked them in a calendar that also held PT sessions and bakery deadlines and Lucas's school concert. The mix felt correct. If the past wanted to exist, it could do so between 11 to 11:30 a.m. on a Wednesday, after exercises and before feeding Mateo, with copies for everyone and no space left for self-blame. One evening, after dishes, Ethan found Clara at the doorway between the kitchen and the hall, cane planted, eyes tracing the line she intended to walk. "Want a spotter?" he asked. She considered, then shook her head. "Watch from there," she said, and took 4 deliberate steps on her own, the 5th with a small reach to the wall, the 6th clean. When she turned, her smile didn't ask for permission to be huge. "Nice try," Ethan teased, quoting Lucas's sticker. "Nice do," Clara corrected, and somewhere a sticker earned its upgrade. The house agreed by staying warm and ordinary, the kind of place where the biggest drama was whether the last eclair should be split or stolen. It was split, and even that felt like generosity practicing for bigger things. The past had made its choice. So had they. The morning announced itself with a clean, forgiving light, sun threading through last night's rain, the yard grass jeweled, as if someone had tipped a box of tiny mirrors over it. Lucas called it good luck weather, and no one argued. Yara arrived with her canvas bag of straps and bands and optimism that bordered on architectural. "Today we flirt with gravity," she said, tapping the parallel bars as if waking them up. A slow dance, not a sprint. Clara had slept well for the first time in weeks. 3 uninterrupted hours, which in newborn math counts as luxury. She ate oatmeal, stretched, braided her hair, and wheeled to the bars with a calm that looked like decision wearing skin. Mateo, drowsy from a feeding, blinked from his bouncer. Lucas hovered nearby with the family phone already set to record, solemn as a documentarian. Ethan adjusted the rubber tips on the cane, double-checked the rug tape, and then made himself still, hands ready, voice quiet. "We stack seconds," Yara reminded, kneeling to check Clara's feet. "We listen to the alarms without letting them drive." She glanced up. "You call the now." Clara nodded. "Now." She placed both hands on the bars, pressed down through arms that had learned patience, and sent weight into legs that had relearned presence. The rise wasn't dramatic. No cinematic swell, no miracle gasp, just a steady, undeniable translation from chair to standing. Her knees quivered. Her jaw set. Air moved in measured loops. "Hello," she said, a strangled little laugh aimed at her own body. "It's me." Half shift to the right, Yara coached softly. "Feel the cane take its share." "Good." Now left foot thinks about forward. Not a step, an idea. The idea became motion. A heel that lifted, a toe that suggested direction, a leg that, months ago, had been an unanswered text and was now a sentence fragment with hope. Clara moved the left foot an inch, then 2. The chair waited behind her like history with manners. Ethan's hands hovered in the space where trust lives. Lucas whispered, "You're doing it." as if words could erase gravity's skepticism. Breathe, Yara said. Don't negotiate with breath. Let it work. Clara breathed, shifted, and moved the right foot to match. A step, not theoretical, not practice. A step. Ethan didn't cheer. He grinned so hard his face ached. Lucas forgot to narrate and just made a sound only children make when the world expands. Mateo, perfectly on brand, hiccuped and smiled in his sleep. 2 steps. 3. On the 4th, Clara wobbled and found the bar like a friend she hadn't texted in a while. She didn't curse. She laughed, a clear bell that made the room taller. Again, she said. And then she did. The clock on the stove ticked in the background, too respectful to intrude. Sit when you choose, not when you must, Yara said after 12 steps that felt like a dozen holidays. Clara turned, centered, and lowered herself with a slow control that had taken months to build and would take months more to normalize. Yara logged data like a poet hiding in a spreadsheet. 12 assisted. 2 independent transitions. Fatigue present will decrease with repetition. Excellence present will remain. They rested, which meant laughing and crying at the same time while pretending it was mostly one or the other. Lucas replayed the video, then announced he would edit a version with dramatic titles. He typed with his thumbs, Clara versus Gravity, Gravity loses, and showed it to her for approval. She approved by kissing the top of his head and wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand. After Yara left, promising brownies on Friday because therapy is multifaceted, the house slid into a gentle celebration that looked like ordinary life with extra brightness. Ethan made eggs he didn't overcook. Lucas found the Victory playlist, which was mostly songs with hand claps and forgiving tempos. Mateo slept the smug sleep of a baby who believes he choreographed the morning. Clara moved through the kitchen with the cane, 2 careful passes without the chair, touching the counter as if confirming the geometry of safety. At the sink she paused, hands braced, face tilted into the sun. I thought standing would feel like a return, she said, half to Ethan, half to the window. It feels like a beginning. In the afternoon, Brianna called with court dates. Tidy, finite, survivable. You're doing beautifully, she said before hanging up, and for once the bureaucratic word felt like a blessing. Clara penciled the dates between Lucas's concert and PT sessions, the past tucked neatly into a week that also included pancakes and a bakery deadline. Toward evening, Ethan carried the folded parallel bars to the garage and returned with something from a high shelf. A simple wooden cane he'd refinished months ago and never used, the grain warm under new varnish. A friend made it for my mom when she was healing, he said, suddenly shy. She would have wanted it to keep moving. Clara took it, ran a thumb along the curve. It's beautiful, she said. It looks like it knows stories. It does, he said, and handed it over without ceremony, the way you hand over a key. They ended the day on the porch, a small family occupying a small square of the world with disproportionate contentment. The sky worked through its colors toward evening. A neighbor's wind chimes traded gossip with a mild breeze. Lucas lay on the steps, narrating the bug traffic with the gravitas of a sports commentator. Mateo dozed against Clara's chest, a tiny fist curled in the fabric of her shirt, as if anchoring her to a place she intended to stay. Ethan reached for Clara's free hand. She didn't hesitate. Fingers laced. No speeches, no oaths, no grand redefinitions. Just the simple syntax of belonging. Somewhere inside, the broken places did not vanish, but they stopped running the meeting. The house clicked its lamps on one by one as if easing the dark in gently. Same tomorrow, he asked. Tomorrow, again, she said, smiling in a way that made tomorrow sound like a promise rather than a threat. The night arrived without drama. In the hallway, for toothbrushes waited by the sink. In the guest room that wasn't temporary anymore, the wheelchair sat tucked by the dresser, not exiled, just demoted. On the fridge, Lucas replaced the nice try sticker with one he'd drawn in blue marker. Nice do. Beneath it, he scrawled, Welcome home.